Hello my creative friends, are you looking for a fun wintertime project, painting project? This little guy, as cute as can be, this Valentine Snowman with his bright colored cheeks and his bright pops of color is so fun to create. I'm going to walk you through the steps of how I painted him, and then I'm going to show you how I put all the little bit of a scribbly bits and added all the extra details using colored pencils, chalk pencils, and add all the special details with that. For those of you who'd like to join along and paint with me, but perhaps you'd like a little bit of help drawing, I do have a sketchbook membership. In a sketchbook membership, you're going to get all the line drawings for any of the paintings that I do on my YouTube channel. I also have a standalone pattern for this one, so you get the pattern, you'll get the paint colors that I used, and any of the mixed media items, I have that all listed there, as well as a reference photo for how I created mine. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you how you can create this little Valentine Snowman cutie. For this painting, it's important to start with some sort of black background. It can be on any surface you choose to paint on. I'm actually painting on black paper. You want to use kind of a scruffier brush. This is just a children's brush that I purchased at Walmart. You want to dip it, get it wet, but then always press it on your paper towel to make sure that there's not a lot of extra water. You're going to pick up the color that you would like to use. Make sure it's well loaded into your brush. Sometimes I even give that brush an extra tap on my paper towel to make sure there isn't a lot of water. Then you're going to be kind of scrubbing back and forth. It's more than a dry brush. Normally when you're dry brushing, you don't get a lot of paint onto your paper. This is somewhere in between a wet brush and a dry brush. Hopefully that makes sense. We're just basically going to start this whole process like a color book style. We're going to be blocking in the colors where we want them. I'm starting with his face, doing the white. You're going to see some of that black background popping through, and that's a good idea. You want to kind of see that, and I'm going to gradually build my layers. I'm going to speed the film up here a little bit and show you as I go along, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I'm going through the process of painting this. The next area I'm going to be working on is the nose, and I'm going to try to leave just a little black all the way around it. I'm going to be using that to my advantage and having the shadow be in that area. For the cup, I'm going to be starting with my blue color and just doing the same type of motion, the same style of painting, making sure I don't have a lot of water in my brush. This is really important when you're changing colors, and if you're washing out your brush and you're using the same brush, you need to make sure you're pressing it on your paper towel to make sure you have the water out first before you load it with the paint. Now for this one, I'm going to go right into my reds. I'm starting with my darkest red first and laying that on. That black background is going to affect the look of the colors. So I'm going to start with that color, and it's going to look dark, but I'm going to brighten it as I go. For the center of the cup, I decided to go ahead and paint that a white color first before I base coated in my green shades. Now I'm going to go up and add another layer of the orange. I'm adding just a tish bit of white to my orange just to brighten up that area just a little bit. Now I'm coming back in and laying in another blue. Each time you do a layer, your color is going to get a little bit more intense. I'm not changing the color. I'm using the same colors. I'm just adding an additional layer. You might also notice I have a space in between the center of my cup, so that white area, there's also a little bit of black in between the blue. I intentionally left that there because I want that kind of a little bit of a shadow area if I can keep it. I'm going to be adding the orange to the top of the hat. That area I did paint it white before I put the orange on, and I thought that helped it pop a little bit more to have that color. Now you can see me adding a little bit more white. Your paint's going to change as it dries, so take a look and just keep on adding the color until you're happy with it. Now I'm adding a little bit of white to the red to create a little bit of a brighter pink color, because this is a Valentine Snowman, so I thought pink would work really well, and I'm just brushing in a highlight here and there. I'm going to be adding a highlight to the blue areas by just mixing a little bit of white into the color blue that I had already used. I'm going to add the next layer of the green by choosing a medium shade of green and putting that over the dark one. I got one more shade of green I want to put on top to even brighten it a little bit more. Now I'm going to start the shading process for my nose, and I'm going to switch my brush. I'm going to be using an angle brush and loading it with the color of the orange, and then just tipping the corner in a darker shade of red. I keep that dark shade of red to the outside of the nose, and that's going to create the shadow line. I tap in a little bit of the orange mixed with some white to add a few little highlights to my carrot. These are just little bits of color, but it makes a big difference. Now to add even a little bit more magic to these pieces, I'm going to be using some fluorescent paint colors. For the red area, I'm using a color called fluorescent pink, and for the orange area, I'm going to be using the color fluorescent red. These colors look beautiful on the background of that black, and they really do make this little snowman have that extra bit of pop. I'm still using the same little brush. I'm just making sure that I'm rinsing, if I have to rinse it out in between colors, that I'm really pressing it hard on my paper towel to make sure there's no water inside of my brush before I were to dip it into my paint. I'm finally going to be able to fix my cup. I noticed it was getting a little wonky, but because it's acrylic paint, you can easily make some changes. Next up, I'm going to put the eyes on this little character, and I created the sweetest little, I call them chocolate chip style eyes, where they have those little tops that are kind of pointed like a chocolate chip and then rounded little bottoms. Now, if you purchase the tracer package, I'll have some written instructions of how you can print it off, then use some tracing paper to create your pattern on your object. It's pretty simple, and it works really well to be able to help you draw these items. Now for the eyes, I'm just going to use a small little angle brush. You could use a round brush as well, whatever you feel most comfortable with doing. And I'm going to be painting my eyes all black. I'm going to be creating the white areas using a floated water technique. So that's going to create that pretty little highlight at the bottom of his eye. Let's add some little colorful cheeks to this little guy. I'm going to take a brush, scrub it onto the palette that I'm using, but then I always like to add it to my hand. And if it feels dry, I know I have enough paint removed to create that really pretty blush cheek look. I start out with a light pink, and then I put the same color red that I use for his scarf as the color on top. I like the two-color technique. Now let's add a little bit more brightness to that green area. I'm ending with my brightest green shade. This is going to take a couple coats because this color is pretty translucent, but I love that pop of green, and I add it to the top of the hat, and I even add just a little bit of it to the blue. I like adding my colors kind of throughout my painting, and this is just going to add that little way to combine my painting and make it all go together. I'm going to slow this part of the video down so I can explain the water floating technique that I'm using on his eyes and around his face. I'm using a very small angle brush. I've dipped it into clean water, and then once it's out of the clean water, I tap it on my paper towel until I see the shine gone. Then I just tip my brush in whatever color I'm using for the float, rub it back on my palette to create that blend of color from dark to light. And then I can go ahead and add the floated shadow look. On this particular one, the brightest or the darkest areas will be on the tip of where I have my brush, and then I'm going to have the lightest as the water goes down. For around his face and around the nose, I chose a darker brown color to add just a little bit of color and dimension, so he looks like he's curving around. I'm going to add a darker shade as well around his eyes, and I like the darkest shadow of his eye to be on the outside of his eyes. The bottom one needs to be your lightest, and then you can go halfway up in between the middle, and that makes a really cute eye. If you get too heavy with the shadows on the bottom, he'll look a little too tired. So keep your darkest shadows to the outside, lightest on the bottom, and then move your way up to halfway in between the eye, and that's a super cute look. I'm going to switch up colors now. I'm going to be using a navy color. I switched up to even using a slightly larger angle brush, but I'm still doing the same color float technique, and I'm adding a bright blue or a navy color to the outside of my cup to add that dimension there. I'm going to add a little bit to the top of his hats, any place I want a shadow, and my blue areas. Once I have the shadowing put in, I'm going to turn my attention to more of those eyes. I need to bring him to life, and that's going to require some white sparkle accents. I'm going to be using a stylus for this. You could also use the end of your paintbrush if that's what you have, but you want to dip it into the white, and you're going to create this little sparkle look in his eyes. There is a little bit of a trick to this, or something to keep in mind, is if you put your dot to the outside which I did here, I need to put it on the inside of the other eye. And then when I do the small dots, I'm going to be adding it to the other side of my eye, and I'll add it to the other side on the other way. If you do it this way, your little guy will have the sweetest little expression. His eyes won't look wonky. It really does matter where you put those white dots. I'm going to use the stylus as well to create those little highlights on his nose. I'm going to add a few on his cheeks, and wherever else you might think you want a little bit of brightness, you'll add it with those little dashes of white. You can see that green coming to life. We're finally getting to that bright time of those areas. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that blue as well and brush that in there. Again, it's kind of adding that cohesion to my painting where I'm adding the blue, the greens, and all those little spots. Now it's time to work on that background. I'm going to pick up the blues again, and I'm doing the same technique, the same style of putting the brush on, the paint on the same way with that dry brush, and then going kind of randomly here and there, not putting necessarily a lot of pressure on it. If you put too much pressure, you'll get big blocks of color. So just brush it in lightly and just kind of scrub your color. I started out with that medium color, or what the color that I had used on the cup first, and then now I'm taking that darker color that I used for the shadows on my blue cup, and I'm adding that to the background. That way, having that lighter color underneath is going to make that blue just really pop, and I thought it looked great in the end to have that bright blue and then that little bit of darker blue as well. When brushing in that paint, I still want to have some of that black in the background, so I don't want to cover it all up. Once this dries, we're going to move on to adding the little mixed media pieces. I'm going to start with my Kimberly XX9B pencil. This is what I like to use to create eyelashes for my pieces and eyebrows, and I also like creating little scribbly bits as well. This pencil is a graphite pencil, but it has very much charcoal qualities for it. You can buy these at Michael's. They're easy to find, and it's a great little pencil, and I keep that in my toolbox of mixed media items. This is when I'm going to be bringing out the chalk pencil again. This is what I actually drew my piece in originally. And I love using this pencil to create little scribbly bits as well. It works perfect over the background of that black dark area. I'm holding my pencil loosely, twisting and pulling and creating those very much irregular line work. I'm not looking to be perfect. I want to add some whimsy to this. So my line work, I want it to be loose and free. And I can create that by twisting and pulling that pencil. You just do this until it makes you feel happy. There's no right or wrong way or a special formula for this. This is just about being creative, and yours is going to look different than mine. So just have fun with this and enjoy the process. I decided it might be kind of fun to have a few little snowflakes in there. Those are just hand-drawn elements, so I'm going to be adding those on. I'm going to be using some color pencil next. So this is just the white step that I'm using, but I'm going to be adding a few more colors with color pencil. I'm also going to be using my Sharpie white China marker. It's a different shade of white. It has a different characteristic than the chalk pencil. So that's a great pencil, and I always use that mostly in my mixed media pieces. So I have some standard pencils that I always have. So the Sharpie China marker, that 9XXB pencil, I have those ready at hand and always use those in my mixed media pieces. You can add little tiny scribbly bits. Go back in and add a little extra highlights as well into your eyes. I hope you can see how he's really coming to life, and adding all these little different elements really changes his character and brings it out. So again, make him your own and create how you would like to create. I created that saying on the front using a pencil, but if you purchase the Trace and Paint bundle, you can easily use the transfer paper just like you did for the eyes. I did the lettering a certain way, but in the end I do change it so it looks completely different. So this isn't the final look. Here you can see me adding some swirls and extra line work with that chalk pencil. A little magic trick with that pencil as well is if you dip it in water, the white line will be brighter than when it's dry. So that's just another look you can create with one pencil. I haven't added the color pencil yet. This is still the chalk pencil, but I love those little swirls all the way around. I decided he needed some hearts, and then I just did that little wiggle line with his smile. Now, none of these things are permanent, so you are going to have to clear coat it using some varnish at the end. I did go over my lettering with a Posca pen, just started with white, and then now I'm adding the little variegated look using colored pencils. I like that look in the end better. I don't consider myself a great lettering person, so this was helpful to start with the white and just use the color pencils to fill it in. I used an aqua color that kind of matched the cup, and then a blue one. I add a little bit of orange and just a little bit of red too. Oh, I did add a drop shadow with some purple. I thought it needed a darker area. It's just one of those back and forth things. Lettering is still a challenge for me, but I like doing it. And practice does make your lettering better. So if you like doing lettering, you can just do a simple letter, just doing a white, or you can add some of these colorful details as well. Once I got this far, I decided I wanted to bring some of the blacker or the dark elements into the inside of my little character, and that 9XXB pencil worked perfect for adding some darker elements inside of the cup. I like having the control of the pencil, and I do like having to be able to create scribbly bits so easy with this pencil. Now let's move on to the next fun part by adding some color using the Prisma colored pencils. I'm going to be taking some orange and some red and doing that little line work inside of the scarf. I'm going to be adding some of that same line work on the top part of his colorful hat band. I even put some scribbly bits of that color inside of his nose. That turquoise, or that soft color of that color that's really close to his cup, I love adding that color in it too, and I'm going to be adding that to the black as well. I love that shade of that green blue color, that it can make those really pretty swirls in the background, and it looks great on that dark background. Take some time and just play and have fun with this step. He's just about done. I'm adding a few little white details, and I'm going to show you what he looks like sitting in my studio with some of the other snowmen I have created so far on my YouTube channel. And here this little Valentine cutie is, looking so cute displayed on this clipboard. I thought it was appropriate since I painted him on paper. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It can really help my channel grow. If you enjoyed this tutorial, here's a couple more you might want to check out. Well, thanks for joining me, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.